Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. If you're the kind of person who loves to completely unpack how history is constructed, how just a mere handful of words can frame an entire era, then you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're not going to skim through some massive dusty textbook or a sprawling timeline. Nope, instead we're doing a deep thematic microanalysis of a single, highly concentrated and honestly fascinating historical artifact. We're going to put this text straight under the microscope to uncover the incredible amount of structure, intention, and cultural weight packed into just a few carefully chosen words. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Before we analyze anything, we've got to set our parameters. The excerpts from Boundary is absolutely crucial for our understanding here, because in historical analysis, defining the exact boundaries of your source material isn't just some boring formality, it literally determines the entire scope of the narrative. We're limiting ourselves entirely to a specific, curated text today. We aren't pulling in a bunch of outside historical documents, we are looking solely at this single framing device. By restricting our view like this, we actually force ourselves to look closer, to really see the pure intentionality behind the phrasing and figure out what the author desperately wanted to convey to us.
And here it is. This right here is our entire source text for today's explainer. I want you to read it with me and really try to feel the weight of these exact 17 words. The birth of the festival, the 1967 Windsor Jazz and Blues Festival story. That's it. Just 17 words. But man, within those 17 words lies an entire architectural framework for a historical narrative. It's not just a passing label slapped onto a document, it's an absolute declaration of significance. It's carefully constructed to tell you a story before the actual story even truly begins.
Now, what's really interesting about this framing is how it forces us to transition from literal text to conceptual weight. Our source material originally contextualizes these excerpts under the banner of a genesis. Think about that word for a second. Genesis. What does it actually mean to document the genesis of a cultural moment? It strongly implies that we aren't just looking at some random concert that happened on a weekend. No, we are looking at a fundamental starting point, a moment that permanently separated everything that came before from everything that followed. Think about the specific linguistic choice of that word, Genesis. It completely elevates the event from a mere musical gathering to a definitive, almost mythical starting point, a true spark. The author could have used a dozen different, much simpler terms to describe the beginning of the festival. They could have just called it the start, or, the first year. But a Genesis? That carries serious historical weight. It's the very first moment something comes into being, actively shifting the narrative from a simple past event to a foundational historical origin that literally demands to be remembered.
But the text doesn't stop there. By pairing Genesis with birth, the text doubles down on this whole idea of creation. It demands that we view this not as some slow, gradual evolution, but as a rupture, a distinct, identifiable moment when something completely new entered the world. The author is vigorously highlighting why this specific origin story matters so much. It's honestly a pretty aggressive framing technique when you think about it. It forces the reader to approach the ensuing historical details with this real sense of reverence, establishing the festival not just as a gathering of musicians, but as a living, breathing entity taking its very first breath.
So the crucial point here is how mathematically structured this title actually is. We can deconstruct the text into four distinct, unshakable pillars that are essentially holding up this entire narrative. We have the event, which is the festival. We have the time, which is 1967. We have the place, Windsor. And of course, we have the music, jazz and blues. It's like a giant puzzle. And if you remove even one of these pillars, the entire structural integrity of the title just collapses. It is a true masterclass in concise informational design, making sure the reader has all the necessary context anchored securely in their mind right from the jump.
Let's isolate 1967 for a second. This temporal anchor locks the festival's genesis to a definitive, highly charged calendar year. The author didn't just casually mention the era, they intentionally locked this birth to 1967. And as we know, 1967 wasn't just any year. It was a year practically vibrating with cultural and musical shifts, setting the exact tempo for what was to come. It tells the reader exactly when the clock started ticking for this cultural moment, demanding that we understand the intense societal backdrop against which this birth actually took place.
Next up, we shift our focus to the geographical anchor, Windsor. Just as 1967 locked us in time, Windsor locks us in space. By placing the city's name directly into the title, the source material immortalizes this highly specific location as the official birthplace in the festival's story. Windsor becomes intrinsically linked to the Genesis. So it's not just a festival that happened to be held in Windsor, it is the Windsor Festival. The location itself is elevated to the status of a main character, shaping the identity of the event just as much as the people who were attending it.
And this brilliantly illustrates the final core components, jazz and blues. By explicitly naming these two foundational genres side by side, the text is promising a very specific auditory landscape. But let's look a little closer at that word blues, specifically anchored in 1967. This isn't just some generic genre label thrown in for fun. It signifies the driving, electric, deeply shifting rhythm behind 1967 blues. The music at this time was undergoing a massive tectonic transformation, becoming heavier, far more urgent, and highly amplified. The text is basically telling us that the very pulse and cadence of that specific era's blues rhythm is entirely foundational to this event's character. It was quite literally the heartbeat of the festival's genesis.
Let's move on and see how this builds into an actual narrative arc, just within the grammar of the title itself. It's totally fascinating. We start with the origin, which is the conceptual genesis. That leads directly to the realization, the birth of the festival, where the idea finally becomes tangible reality. And finally, it culminates in the legacy, the story. Before you even have a chance to process the historical facts, the title has seamlessly taken you on this chronological journey from the initial spark of an idea to its cemented place in history as a tale worth recounting.
And that brings us to the most captivating part of this entire analysis. The Genesis is definitively documented by this text. The structure is set in stone. The time, the place, and those deep driving rhythms of 1967 blues are all promised to us. The narrative arc is perfectly framed. But what exactly happened when those notes first rang out in Windsor? Today, we only possess the title of this story. The framework is flawless, but it leaves us with the ultimate historical cliffhanger. What does the rest of the story actually say?